welcome to Parents Anonymous Podcast. I'm Tal.
Hi, I'm Rupali, and welcome to today's episode. So today we're going to be talking about transition from going from one to two kids and how that went for us, what some of the pros and cons were, what made it easier, what made it harder. So let's get into it.
The views on Parents Anonymous podcast are 100% ours, crafted with love, chaos, and whatever was left of our sanity after bedtime.
So let's talk about going from one to two kids. I've heard a lot of different mixed things about when we transitioned from one to two, and then also the transition from zero to one, like which one is harder and which one is easier. So obviously we have experience in both. Some people say that from zero to one is the hardest because you're just you know nothing, and then from that you're kind of going to the first, and then other people have said actually from one to two is even harder for different reasons. So we'll talk about that in today's episode.
Yeah, if one wasn't chaotic enough for you and you want to add a little bit more chaos, why not, right?
So today we're going to be talking about going from one to two kids, transitioning from one to two, and as we've said in some of the previous episodes, we've had two kids. We have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. And you hear from different people, what is it that's harder? Is it harder to go from zero to one or from one to two? So that's what we'll talk about in our personal experience today.
Yeah, exactly. For us, we have two kids that are about 2 years apart. So what that looks like for us might look different for someone that wants to have another addition to their family, but their either first child is way older or maybe younger. So again, we're just going to share our perspective, is what we know.
Yeah. So let's talk about kind of the emotional side of things first. I think for us, going from zero to one versus one to two, there was a lot of active thought that we put into our first and the impact on our 3-year-old when our son came. So we did a lot of conversations and ways that we would make sure that she's not forgotten in the transition from one to two. You have to know that things will be busier when you go from one to two. Just naturally, things are going to be more amplified, more chaotic, two different schedules of two different kids to follow, what each kid likes, doesn't like all of it is different.
It is different, and the other side of it is how are you gonna manage or learn to manage those things? Because these 2 beings are at a stage in their life where they're very dependent upon us. So how do we, divide and conquer, or do we, cater to the 3-year-old and yet still, take care of that 1-year-old? Or at that time, he was the baby, and she was just a little bit younger than what she is now, so all those things play a big factor. I know from my experience, I have a younger sibling, and we're about 2 years apart, so I lived that experience, and I think, growing up, maybe there's times where I needed more attention and I didn't get, or vice versa with my brother. So I know for a fact for our case, I wanted to make sure both kids got hopefully equal and undivided
Attention
attention.
thus
Yeah.
far, yeah. The other thing when it comes to emotions is anxiety or guilt when it comes to having two, because now I think about when we have to go somewhere, we have to think about both of them. So before it would just be the one, okay, I can drop her off with grandma, or I can, leave her with a friend or whatever. But now with the transition, it's like now there's two. So that guilt of leaving both of them with somebody is much more because it's double the work.
Hmm.
Each one has their own unique needs, and it's just more work. I did find that it was helpful for us initially, the time that we spent together at home, just to establish a routine, see how things are going for our 3-year-old. And then at that time, as you said, our son was a baby. So we knew that newborn stage really well. So I have to say, one of the things that was a positive of going from one to two is really for me enjoying that newborn stage, really taking the time to enjoy that newborn stage. And our older one was going to daycare. So we actually all three of us got to spend time together, me, you, and our son when he was a newborn, and we just got to enjoy it a little bit more. We just slowed down things a little bit more, and that was really nice
Yeah.
too.
So if you're a first time listener, just to add to what Rapali just said, we were fortunate enough to be off at the same time on parental leave. So
Yep.
through our employers, we were able to get time off, and through the EI program. So having that intimate, time together with that newborn baby was crucial. And for those that do follow if you've watched our episode 7, Cherish the First 6 weeks, which is the tool that we use for, again, those first 6 weeks, which are very crucial for that long-term development for the child. That played a big factor into even number 2. Yes, we still use that book for when our son was born
Yeah.
religiously. That was a system we had in place for a daughter, which was very successful for us in teaching her those really good habits of sleeping, feeding, all that. So I think when people ask, okay, is it easier or is it harder in the sense of taking care of that child? I find it was easier for me because I knew the system that worked for us,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
and continuing that with our son.
Yeah, and the harder part of it is that there's just 2 of them.
Yes.
So you think about that responsibility. So if you're somebody who has 1 child and you're thinking about going to a second, think about, what am I ready for twice the responsibility?
Hmm.
Because it is.
Yeah.
And what are my expectations of how things will go and what will actually happen? So you have to think about everything, really. You have to rethink everything when it comes to, what will my life look like? You have to think about your work. You have to think about, what kind of support system do I have? Has it been helpful? Has it been the right support that I needed? What did postpartum look like for my wife? Was it
Hmm.
easy? Was it hard? How did I support her? And how, I guess, as a partner, how am I going to support her now that she has a newborn, but now I'm even more involved because you have the older child to take care of and
Exactly.
think of.
Yeah. And as we all know, the times that we live in right now financially, it can be very straining on people with all
Yeah.
the different stuff going on in our lives. So that's something you want to keep in mind as well. How are we going to manage my job, my work, how, paying like the finances? Is there really additional cost? And again, people always want to know, like,
Yes.
how much of a burden financially does a child have, or not so much as a burden, but an impact.
Mhm.
And I think it's very minimal for the first while because, again, if you're right now have 1 child and you're thinking about donating those clothes or giving them away to a
Or
family member,
toys.
hold on to them
Yeah.
till you really know,
Yeah.
because those same, clothes, everything, you get to reuse,
Yeah.
obviously minus, some things have expiries like car seats and stuff like that. But yeah, so you're looking at an addition of another crib, car seat, stuff like that.
Diapers,
Type,
that kind of stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
So there is a bit, but not as much as I thought it was.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you. It's a little bit easier when it comes to the financial impact because you have a lot of the same things. The first time around is way more expensive because
Mhm.
everything, you don't have anything
Yeah.
from every stage, right? For the first 6 months, you don't need that much stuff. But then when they start eating, when they start, moving around a little bit more, you need to help them with walking, all of that. There's different things that
Yeah.
you likely want to have so that you can help them developmentally keep growing. But you're right. Second time around, we really didn't purchase a lot of stuff.
No.
Financially, it was less impactful for sure.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, how did we prepare our first child? How did we prepare our daughter for what was to come?
Yeah. That's a tough one, right? Because it's like, again, this having a second child is something new, right? Like,
Yeah.
you've had the first. At this point, our daughter is about 2 years old when, we're pregnant with our son.
Yeah.
So having her, I think, involved with the pregnancy aspect, talking to her about it, saying, "Oh, you have a sibling or a baby that's, in mama's
Coming.
tummy. It's
Yeah.
gonna come." I think that played a crucial role for us to really implement and have her, you know, educate her essentially in
Yeah.
what it looks like to have another sibling.
Yeah, and it's a very fine balance, isn't it? Because you can't be talking about it every day. You can't say every day that, "Oh, there's a baby coming. There's a baby coming in mama's tummy. Are you gonna love that
Yeah,
baby? Are you gonna play with that baby?" It has to be a fine balance of letting her know what's happening, but not bombarding her every day or every chance you get that there's a baby coming. I think
yeah,
we were really careful with that. I know that people around us would always, joke with her or be like, "Hey, you have a baby coming. What are you going to do? How are you going to play with the baby?" and that. And that was fine. So I think for us, me and you, we did it a little bit, but we kind of stepped back.
yeah,
The other part that was really important for us after our son was born, and we talked about this ahead of time, is how are we going to introduce her to her new baby brother? So we were really mindful of how we did that. And actually, side note, we'll just share a story of how things went for her. unfortunately, when the day that he was actually born. So again, he was if you guys listen to one of our previous episodes or some of them, you know our story that when our son was born, again, I went spontaneously into labor because my water broke. So we obviously weren't expecting and we didn't know when he would come. Both of them were early and my son was 1 week early. Our son was 1 week early. So it was actually our daughter's picture day at school.
Yeah.
So the night before, we had all her stuff sorted out. We had all her clothes ready. And we knew that next day she's going to have all these pictures taken. And that night, my water broke
Yeah.
and Tal and I were gone.
Yeah, it was like 1 a.m. that
It
your
was 1
water
a.m.
broke.
Yeah. So we left and we let Tal's mom know, grandma know that, okay, we're going to the hospital. It's her picture day today. Please help her
Yeah.
get dressed and get ready. And we have the pictures from that day of how she just didn't look like she was expecting to be woken up by grandma and gotten ready for school from grandma. And then grandma dropped her off to daycare. And then you can tell in her pictures that her hair is not the way that I would do it. And she just looks like she's off.
Yeah. She did not look happy in those pictures.
So we wanted to be mindful of how she was introduced to her brother. And we decided that we didn't want any other family around just because there's so many factors and things that are happening. And we decided that Tal would just bring her. So Tal, I was still in the hospital and then Tal decided to go and pick her up and then bring her. And I wanted to make sure that I was not holding our son and that he was just here. And then we just wanted her to remember that it's still Mama Dada. Like I'm still her mom and you're still her dad, because we just really wanted to make sure that we didn't create any jealousy or differences between the two of them.
Exactly. When I went to go pick her up, I let her know that she was going to be meeting her baby brother today. Kind of got her excited. I told her I missed her and I'm very happy, that she did a good job going to school. We call it school for daycare for her, just to have that structure. And I think we'll cover in another episode of preparing your child for daycare and
Yes.
and how much of a struggle it can be for them,
Yeah.
especially they want to stay home with, mom, dad.
For the struggle for the kids and the parents.
Yeah, and the parents too. I brought her and the staff or the nurse, she was amazing that we had as well for our son's birth time. And I had her have my phone so she could film us. And like Rupali had our son was laying on the hospital bed. And then I held our daughter's hand and walked in and then
you plopped her on the bed and I told her, look, it's your baby brother. So she was plopped on the bed and then she sat and just kind of saw him for a minute and just kind of took it, and you can see her smiling. And we asked her, do you want to give him a kiss? And then she gave him a kiss on the forehead and then she gave me a hug. And it was just a beautiful moment. And when I held her, it was the weirdest feeling. And I don't know if you had this feeling. We haven't talked about this, but when I held her after our son was born, it was almost an instant where it felt like she was so big. Like our little baby is just big all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And we, in the next few weeks, we took pictures of both of them together. And it just felt like all of a sudden she's just this big sister who was once our just little baby. And I've seen a lot of different moms and dads share that, all of a sudden that little child is now big because in comparison, now you have this little newborn.
Yeah. And our son was like 6.5 pounds, so he's not a big baby. So that kind of played a factor. And I always just kind of joke that she got, upgraded to her sister status, and she was very excited. But this is where my fears came in. And as a child her age, again, she would have been 2 years, 3 months old.
Yeah, 2 years and a
So
bit.
she's fairly self-aware as a child, but at the same time, like I had this newborn baby that was very fragile, right? Babies are, and my worry was like, holding or maybe grabbing his hand, it's not too hard, or she's twisting, stuff like that. So that's something that I watched out for.
Yeah,
after
and
that.
you're talking about that jealousy piece.
Mm-hmm.
So again, every time we were having interactions with both of them around, we were just more careful. One of the other things we wanted to make sure is that she had just one-on-one time with me or you at least once in the day. That was really important because then again, my attention is not divided, your attention is not divided. And I think we did really well in that. So sometimes for me, after our son, I would be in bed. Let's just say with my son, maybe he's napping, and Tal would be in the same room, but his attention would be towards our daughter. And that made a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just mindful. And to be honest, in the last year and a bit, now that our son's a year old, I'd say there's very little jealousy that I can see between the two of them. There's times that I think during playtime, especially now, sometimes she will grab something from him and not realizing that he's a baby, or sometimes she'll try to help him, but she actually is not helping him. She's maybe, pushed him or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's been very rare, which I'm really happy for.
But in the initial stages, though, even when he started crawling, or even before crawling, we had him doing, sitting and playing. As a child, like all the toys or all the coloring stuff, whatever, all the things she has, she's only known those to be hers, right? There was no one else around
Yeah.
to share with. So I think for us, we really talked about sharing. We did a lot of examples, or we would, do pretend play and
Yes.
show, Rapali and I sharing with each other how important that was. But again, as a 2.5-year-old child at that point, you're still not used to it. And then the big yang, and he's learning to sit or crawl, and he'd fall over and then start crying. So again, with the parenting, it's a very delicate
Yeah.
balance of educating her, but yet not lashing out at her about that.
Yeah.
Because again, she's just a very young child that she doesn't.
She's a 2-year-old. I think reasoning and decision making and all of that is very poor.
Yeah,
So you have to just remember that
Yeah.
at the end of the day, that if she's trying to do something, sometimes she didn't mean to. So we have to be sure of that. The other thing that did happen, so maybe in another episode we'll cover the pros and cons and the difference in age and what impact that will make. Because she was a 2-something-year-old, she was learning to use the potty. So one of the things that did happen is a little bit of a regression when it came to her potty training. We did notice that. And I think that, to be honest, that's with the age gap and maybe some of the things that we did or did not do when we actually started potty training her, which we will cover in a different episode. We actually want to hear from you guys, anyone that's listening. How did you make it to the other side of potty training? Because it's for us, it's a bit of a struggle. But anyways, we did notice that the regression was there when it comes to potty training. And that's just because, again, we were not focused on when did she last go to the washroom, and we didn't really look at her schedule because we were busy with the newborn, but we definitely noticed a bit of a regression, and that's because of the age gap, I'd
Yeah.
say.
No, exactly. I know a lot of frustrations and a lot of days where I was almost in tears, like, this potty training's getting hard. But then at the same time, I had to realize, yeah, we got, another child here that we were taking care of. And I had to not be so hard on myself. And I'm sure you're the same way.
Yeah.
Sometimes we, take it out on ourselves and beat ourselves up. But we just have to realize, like, yeah, it's kids. It's not perfect. And that's the one thing I think our overall theme is, like, parenting is far from like perfection for anyone. I've yet to meet someone say, "Oh, it's easy." It's like,
Yeah.
so my kids are perfect. No, it's
My kids are perfect. My house is perfect.
Yeah.
I'm doing everything perfectly. Like, no.
yeah, my social life's perfect. I can see my friends whenever. No, it's
Yeah, something's got to give.
yeah,
Yeah. One of the other things I wanted to talk about, which was really beautiful to see in our daughter, is taking on that responsibility and the tasks and all of the things that come with being a big sister or a big sibling.
hmm
She was just so excited anytime that our son would need a diaper or his pacifier. She would be excited to be a part of that. So if we ask her, hey, he needs XYZ, she would just run and she would grab it. She would hold him. She would kiss him. If he was doing tummy time, she would just, come run up and just be beside him on her tummy and being like, hey, look. And it was just the sweetest thing watching both of them interact. I have to say that's one of the most special things when he came along, and how she shifted from being the baby to now being the older sibling.
exactly. She's taken on that role seriously. And there's times, if you ask her something, or my mom, her grandma will ask her, "Can you grab this?" She might say no
Mhm.
at first, but then we don't pressure her. We don't.
Yeah, we respect
We
her.
respect her time as well, and say, "Okay, "Okay, we'll grab it." And then at most times she's like, "No, no, I got it." And even like as an example, the pacifier, we don't really use a pacifier much, but during the teething time, we utilize it a little bit, and
Yeah.
our son's not dependent on it whatsoever. So it's like I would say, "Hey, can you grab the pacifier for your brother?" She brings it and then she wants to put it right into his mouth, and I was like, "No, no, it's okay. Like he can grab it himself." And he doesn't like someone shoving a pacifier in his
There's been
mouth.
times where she would just run up and just hold his forehead and then use her hand to literally, like I said, like shove the pacifier. It's like, it's okay, but you don't need to do that.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
we did have to also think about when it came to our older daughter and then our son, the sleep schedules and how things would work. And I think I would say pretty well we made it work fine. We were extremely glad that she still takes naps. And during the time that he was little, there would be times in the middle of the day that they would both nap together. And we
hmm
still have that a little bit of that overlap. And oh my God, that just gives us such a break.
Yeah, that's how we're able to film these episodes. We utilize that nap time when they're both sleeping, and we're able to, you
Yeah.
know, get in our cozy spot here and film. So
Yeah. So that's just something else to think about is that age gap. If they're too little, they might be napping more. If the age gap is too big, your older one might actually be dropping naps and not napping at all. So you have to think about when and if you will get a reprieve from the day. And then
yeah.
obviously nighttime, hopefully they both sleep well.
The other thing I want to just kind of touch on is our role playing for a child is fantastic. Using their imagination, it just helps build all sorts of skills and that brain development. There's times where she sees him being a baby and being taken care of as a baby that she, wants to be a baby as well, and she'll pretend. Even with that, that's completely normal. But I would recommend setting boundaries, and we tell her, yeah, go ahead, you can be a baby, and we do it for a little bit, and then sometimes we'll switch the role and she'll get one of us to be the baby and take care of us.
Yeah.
And that's that nurturing thing that we all humans have, right? We want to nurture and help others, and I think that's good to feed into that and let them nurture that as well and expand that part of their knowledge. But at the same time, then we got to set boundaries and only do it for to
Yeah.
15
Certain amount of
minutes
time.
or
Yeah.
what you're comfortable with, and then just diverting to something else. And that helps her experience that little bit of,
Yeah.
baby love that she sees us give to her brother. And then she's able to then, move on from that and
Yeah.
not feel left out.
And she doesn't need it much, I noticed.
Yeah.
There's been times that she's actually like, "No, I don't wanna give you a hug," or
Yeah.
or, "I actually don't wanna give you a kiss," because sometimes we'll do that with our son, and he's not at a point right now where he can say no, so
Yeah.
you feel like you can do that, and it's he's not breaking your heart by saying no. Uh, so one of the other things that should talk about is when it comes to the mental load of having two, what does that look like for both of us, and how does it did it and is it impacting our relationship?
hmm
Again, when there's more responsibility, there's more things to sort out and figure out. It's easier in the sense that you know what's coming in every single stage from when they're a newborn to now they're sitting and they're, becoming older and more independent and developmentally there's things going on. It's easier because you know what to expect, but it's harder, I'd say, when it comes to a relationship. And we both, and as we've said before to you guys, we both always saw ourselves as the same part of the same team. We're on the same side when it comes to raising them. And there is even more impact. There was even more impact in our relationship as a whole. So when they're napping or when they're asleep in the evening is our time together. And we wanted to especially wanted to ensure that we don't lose that and we still have time together. And that's really important for us. But it did impact our relationship.
It did. I always, I value my time with Rapali. We're both working professionals, and life is busy. We have friends, that we want to see as well, and thankfully we share a lot of the same friends, and we can kind of hang out in those group settings. I do a lot of I do extracurricular other stuff for work, so it's like my time gets taken away, same as yours. So like, how do we meet in the middle, and how do we make time for us and carve that time out? And like Rapali mentioned, like bedtime for us is key. We have both of them on a
Yeah.
consistent bedtime routine, and it gives us usually about an hour after that till we go to sleep, and we're early bedtime people and early risers, and that's
Yep.
just how we are, and that's what we like. But I think what made it successful for us was, and again, this might be different for you folks watching, and it's different for everyone, but we really like set ourselves up beforehand before we had kids. Made sure our jobs were stable.
Yep.
We built our house ourselves and to our specs that we wanted that works for us. Having different areas for the kids, having different areas in the house for us. We're sitting in one of those right now where this is kind of our safe space and where we get to just hang out, unplug, and be together. So I think having all those in place really helped our relationship. Again, I can only speak for us, and everyone's different. And the other thing is just setting time in the calendar sometimes. It kind of sounds silly, but having those date nights,
Yep.
doing different activities together, going out, stuff like that, or we do like hiking, other activities that really nurture our relationship.
Yeah, I think that's huge. One of the things, as you were talking, I was thinking about is you have to think about when you go from one to two, does it make sense, as you said, in the space that you're living? Not only when it comes to the support system that you have, the age difference, you want to think about all that, but it is important to think about space. Do you want them to both share a room together? Are you co sleeping? How are things going to work out for you in the beginning? And when you have that second child, you have to think about the kind of car you have. You have to think about car seats, and if your older one is going to daycare or school. We purchased a second car seat for our older one
Yeah.
because we wanted the ability for either one of us to go pick her up or drop her off from daycare. So you have to think about all of those things and space and all the logistical side,
Yeah.
really.
And if you can get those things in place, then you're able to really focus on the other more important stuff, and that's that time together. And having those set up will just, I think, set you up for success in your
Totally.
relationship. Life's busy for everyone, right? But then you add that element of children, it just amplifies it by
Yeah,
like,
tenfold or 20-fold,
tenfold, yeah,
whatever.
whatever, lot, right? So we all work full time. Or majority of us do. We have social lives. We have family obligations to our
Yes.
siblings, to our parents. But when you have kids, you still have all those.
Yeah.
But then now you have obligations to these, human beings that you have to take care of and provide love and nurture. But then where do you fall as that couple, right? And it is gonna kind of digress a bit. It's just the
Natural.
natural to
Yeah.
do that. But I think we've talked about it, and it's an underlying theme, and I think a lot of our episodes as well is communication. I think it's very important to let your partner know how you're feeling. And again, someone I've mentioned this before, I'm a problem solver. And I told Rapali, and I again worked really, really hard at this skill, is to tell her, like, yeah, let me know how you're feeling. If you're feeling kind of distant from me because of XYZ, then please tell me. I won't try to fix it right in that moment and say, oh, let's go, let's plan a date night for tomorrow night. No, I'll just listen. And I just want to know where she's at during that point in time.
Yeah.
And I think you do the exact same for me, and you listen
Yeah.
and you don't try to solve it. And then the solving part comes in another time or day.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be right away. For us, it was really not forgetting that all of the people outside of our kids and me and you, it's extra for a bit, especially because they're so little, out of our kids. And you hear a lot of people talk about when you have two under two or that kind of, it's a very busy time, and there's a lot of stressors involved with the children because you want to do things right and you're just more involved. They're just obviously
Hmm.
they need you more than ever. The older they get, the less and less they'll actually need you for things. They'll be more and more independent. But in that time, which we were at when our son was born, we had two under two. So
Yeah.
we were really trying to make sure that we are taking care of them, but also making sure that we have time and we pour time into our relationship so that we are just sometimes we talk about the kids when we're together, sometimes we don't. But regardless, we make sure that we have that time together so that the more aligned we are, the better we can be for both of
Yeah.
them.
And I think just being realistic about that as well. And
Yeah.
Rapali and I are one of those couples that we express ourselves by just communicating and saying how we're feeling. And
Yeah.
sometimes emotions get high. You're not feeling good, or work's not going well, or socially something's going on in your life, that happens, right? And I think we're used to communicating all the time. What was hard for me was, especially after we had our son, there's certain days where, you or I might have an appointment that we got to go to. And then you add the element of, okay, now the kid's got to have a bath, right? Add that routine. Oh, we got to cook meals. But what else do we have? Oh, we have something happening the next day we need to prepare for a
Yeah.
function, or we got to clean. And then in those days, I might have talked to like Rapali for a total of like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
That's it. We barely got a hug in, hey, how was your day? We, put the kids down and we sit down, throw on Netflix, and that's all we have the capacity for.
Yeah.
It took a bit for me to realize, like, that's okay. Those days
Yes.
are okay. And I felt so bad about those days. Again, like, our episodes or filming this is a way of, like, I think just self-healing for each of
Yes.
us as well. So
Yeah.
I bring this up, and it's not the first time I've talked to Rapali about this before too. But I realize, like, those days are okay. Like, they happen, and we just don't have the bandwidth.
Yeah. We have talked about that. And I think for me, that was a little bit easier, I'd say. And that's why I had to voice it to you. And I remember even in the beginning with our daughter when she was born, there was times that because we were not used to having laundry not done, cleaning not done, just having a bit of a mess around us. We just were not used to
Yeah,
that.
we're not
And
those
I
people.
remember in the beginning, like Tal was so run down, not just from the lack of sleep, the caring for the baby, caring for me as a new mom, making sure I'm okay emotionally, making sure I'm fed, making sure he eats and feeds and nourishes himself. But he was also running around worrying about the laundry and the cleaning. And I had to literally tell him to stop. Do you remember that?
I
I
do
had to
remember
say,
that.
the laundry can wait. It's okay. I just want you to be okay and us to be okay. All of the other things can just wait. And I had to tell him that. And I think with the second time around, I knew, and just because I knew things are going to be busy, I just had accepted that you're not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. This is just the season of our marriage that we're in, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And I was okay with that, but I had to remind him of that because I didn't want you to feel like you had to go out of your way or try to pull energy from yourself that you didn't have.
Yeah.
So after I shared that, I think things were okay for us.
Yeah. That we communicate those expectations and we're both agreed on them. It wasn't just a one person saying, like, forget about the laundry or this, that you were like mentioning, and I had to kind of register it, see, yeah, I gotta be okay with that. And again, we're those people that like to have our home, spick and span, and we were those. Now we're realizing, hey, we're parents, and we'll tell people, we'll say, hey, look, house might be a little messy right now.
Yeah.
And they understand. They're like, they
Yeah.
see we have two kids,
Yeah.
and we try to dial it in, but it sometimes doesn't work, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but as we come towards the end of the episode here, I think what are some summary points for you if you're considering expanding your beautiful family and adding another? Again,
Yeah.
we only have experience with two children. You might have experience with maybe two and adding a third. I don't know, but I'm sure a lot of the principles are the same.
Yeah, as we wrap up, let's talk about a couple of things. I think one is, did you experience any burnout when we had our second child?
Uh,
Was there a moment or was it just all encompassing? Like, did you experience any burnout?
yeah, I still experience burnout,
Right.
right?
But I think when the transition happened, I guess is
Yes.
the question. So like the first, let's say 6 months or even 1 year, if you want to say. For me, I wouldn't use the word burnout.
Yeah.
For me, I would say things are busy, you're more tired, you have more to do, but I wouldn't say there's burnout. Like it just takes me longer to do sometimes simple things,
Yeah.
like day-to-day things, like, making sure that our house is clean, making sure that the toys are not all over the place, making sure that I pay this certain bill that I have to. It just takes me longer, I would
Yeah.
say, to do things. I wouldn't say for me that I experience burnout.
Yeah, no, I think the best analogy that I can think of is, let's say you have a juggler that's do their juggling, and there's someone there that adds another ball, right?
Yeah.
Or and okay, they're going, and another one gets added. And that's what I feel like. Those balls get added. I'm juggling, but I'm still juggling, right?
Yeah.
Nothing's falling, and when one thing gets done, that you can get rid of it and you got less to juggle. And that's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
Life goes on and you got to manage. But if you're someone that's listening and said, I have had a burnout, that's completely normal too, right? And I really am an advocate of like mental health and well-being. And if you're having that burnout, talk to someone, right? You can reach out to a professional or someone in your family or a friend that you trust, or reach out to us and we can talk about it as well.
Yeah. How do you think being a parent of a second child, how did that change you as a parent?
Okay, that's a loaded question. Yeah, how did it change? I think it just added more layers of multitasking to it, whereas one focusing on one child is easy for me. Like it's like I know I gotta feed, I gotta, change, bathe, all this kind of stuff. Now adding the second, it was like, okay, how do I figure out managing another added routine element, right? Like, a baby needs to be fed at different times, there's diaper changes, all that kind of stuff. And then just learning and leaning on you as well, and just
Yeah.
saying it's not all on me. There's two of us leaning on, your parents, my parents, like,
For me, I would say it made me a more confident parent, definitely. And also it made me a less anxious parent, but just because I knew what to expect
yeah.
and I knew you and I, we were around, we had gone through things, so we wouldn't get as anxious with things. We were just more confident in the way that we came across as parents, I think. And as we're wrapping up, what do you wish, if anything, others who have two kids told you before you had your second? Is there anything you wish you had a heads up on? Is there anything that you feel like you didn't know? Any tips?
Yeah, I think for the most part it was positive what people said. I really had few people go like say anything negative, or if anyone really. It was just said that be confident in your skill set, because you got your first child this far. Do the
Yeah.
exact same for second if that was
Yeah.
what was working for you.
Yeah.
And I really do. I felt very confident because we kept it consistent between
Yeah.
the two children, the system that we have in place, and our idol Helen Moon in her book Cherish the First 6 weeks.
Yep.
Just relying on that, and I know we were 2 for 2 on, their sleeping through the nights and all that kind of stuff. So I think the advice that I got, I would probably just reiterate to the next person is be confident in yourself. You be confident in your partner, and yeah, it is easier because you've done it once.
Yeah.
Right? Anything you do for the first time is always gonna be hard.
Yeah.
Anything you do it for the second, third, fourth, fifth, etcetera, is always gonna get easier and easier.
Yeah. And I think I would agree with you. I really don't think there was anything I needed to know. There was a lot that I wish I had known the first time around, though.
Mhm.
But the second time around, I really don't think there was anything that I feel like I didn't know.
Yeah.
All of it for me, I have to say, overall, is very positive. Just seeing the two of them interact, just seeing the older one be the big sister, and how they kind of take care of each other. Even this morning, I was having a conversation with my with our daughter, and I asked her, what is your job as a older sister, as an older sibling, and she said to love him. So things like that,
Yeah.
like moments like that, that just make you feel so good,
Yep.
and then just seeing that sibling bond that they have, how they interact with each other. For us, balancing it out, it's busy. Bath time is busy.
Yeah.
When one of us has to go somewhere, you have to leave, 1 to 2. The ratio's
Yeah,
off
yeah.
now they've ganged up on you kind of
Yeah.
thing. But it's okay. We make it work. And I think we check in with each other. And at the end of the day, we communicate if there's something going on. It's busy, but seeing that interaction of both of them, it's really
Yeah.
amazing.
No, exactly, and that term "divide and conquer" will become a staple in your household,
Yeah.
because sometimes it's just easier to, take the one child, do theirs, and while the other person, and not having the one person do everything while the
Yeah.
other might, yeah, it's just share the load.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome.
With that, I think we can wrap it up. As always, we always want to hear from you guys about what you think of our episodes. What more do you want to know about? There's so many topics that we do continue to want to get into.
Yeah.
But this one is an important that we wanted to film because we know some of our listeners have one, child, so they're new parents or they are thinking about the transition. What does it actually look like to go from one to two? So hopefully you found this helpful. And if you have more questions for us, please reach out and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Yeah, see you on the next one.
Bye.
Bye.